Blended Podcasts. Brought to you by Blended Audio.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Sound Vibes. I am your host, and this is also your host. Say hello, Pat.
Hello.
I'm Mr. NAT, and this is Patty McD. How you doing, Pat?
I was actually really excited when you said how you're going to introduce the show, and I think I kind of squelched you somehow. Because like before we started, and it's like, yeah, man, I'm going to introduce her. And now you're like, hey, welcome to Sound Vibes.
Oh, so now I'm the mellow one. Is that what we're doing now?
Yeah, like I've rubbed off on you.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. I'm still...
No, you're supposed to be rubbing off on me.
You.
Yes, well, yeah, so yeah, your homework assignment to me is to get me to be more lively.
To get you more lively.
Yes.
So we've gotten to a point now where we're on our, what is this? Our fifth. This is our fifth episode.
Yeah.
And already you're rubbing off on me and now, good day, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Sound Vibes podcast with your hosts, NATE and Patty McD. So that's literally going to be the intro from now on.
All right, I can live with that.
Can you?
No.
I don't know if I can. So what are we talking about today, Pat?
All right, guys, welcome back. Our fifth episode. We've been talking the last couple of episodes about songwriting. This journey that Nathan and I are on in our respective, band projects and whatnot. And today we wanted to talk, well, we kind of touched on lyrics a little bit when we were talking about hooks, musical hooks.
Yeah.
Or like song hooks. So like today we want to talk about the significance of lyrics and vocals in songwriting.
You're looking at me as if like, this is your domain.
Well, in it?
Yeah, it is kind of. But I, personally, I'm quite modest. And I'm not...
You modest.
Dude, that's hurtful. I like to be a little bit overcritical, and I think that tends to be a problem with some people because it kind of saws off productivity completely. But lyrical writing is a very interesting process because from different perspectives and different people, there are different ways to go about it, obviously. Something that I'm more familiar with was poetry before actually forming it into melodic rhythms and music. The music side of things, like conjoining the two together, was nearly impossible for me.
Okay.
Couldn't do it. I was a spoon when we needed a fork.
Yeah. So sorry, just for some context for the listeners who don't know, you are the vocalist and frontman for your current band.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. Right.
Raksha.
So this is what makes you the better qualified of the two of us.
Well,
I'm only the guitar
guy.
Yeah.
You're the guitar dude for that one band.
I mean, it's not that I haven't contributed lyrics to music before. But it's not my forte. It's not my primary function, whereas it is yours.
Yeah. Look,
spit it out.
I don't know what to do with myself right now. Like I think of lyrics and I just go into the zone, and in that zone I'm telling stories with other stories and stories with other stories, and it just gets a bit confusing. But I usually find myself in that space after a place of great anguish and despair, and sometimes happiness. But as you know, in our genre, it's really difficult to make something happy sound really good. Especially with our demographic being angry people and angry teenagers. They just want chaos. So I will take something that I've written poetically and I will do my best to go to my guitarist. Something that's what you do. And I go, Mr. Guitarist, in this case it's Justin, I'll be like, help! I don't know what to do with this. Please send me some music so I can combine and try and make something of it. And 9 times out of 10, he'll be like, yeah, cool, man, sweet, yeah, no, I'll give you something now. And then he, like 2 months later, he gives me something now. So I'll take that and I'll mull it over and I'll keep listening back to myself and try and create a rhythm with it. And most of the time it works, but sometimes it doesn't, and then you get this, what do they call it, writer's block, where you've taken something you've already written, but now you have to add more or you have to extract, you know, and that's like taking a toy away from your child, you know. You don't want to take away, that's actually a bad analogy. I'm trying to think of a better one. You know, when you have this thing that you've created, but now you have to take like 2 of its legs away.
Yeah.
In order for it to work with music. And that creative process can be very daunting, but at the same time satisfying, because when it works really well. When it doesn't, you're like, I just need to do this again.
Yeah.
And that whole process gets me riled up, and I end up writing more stuff. Now, I would love to know, and this is something I would love for future episodes, is if we could actually get someone on here who has different writing style, or a different writing style to me.
Yeah, well, I think this is kind of the question I wanted to get to is, I mean, you've described a writing style, a process, but there's obviously many processes towards, you know, songwriting, wherein lyrics are an active part of that process. You know, so what you've described is, in your situation, it's not necessarily an organic process.
No, it's very mechanical.
Yeah, or like it's not immediately organic. And I think I've had this problem also, where if we're not writing in the room together, oftentimes it takes quite a long ways around. Yeah, but because my feeling towards songwriting is that it's a feeling, especially when you know doing it as a collaborative, you know, like a collaboration with another artist, not songwriting by yourself in your room, where usually you know, the person singing or creating the lyrics might be the same person laying down basic music. So in a band environment, sometimes it does become a little bit, how do we say, almost like disjointed in the process.
Yeah.
And eventually it comes around, like you say, like 2 months later. You know?
Look, a lot of people say, don't rush it. Don't rush the songwriting process. And I agree with that, totally. But for someone who has an idea and can lose that idea very quickly, you sort of get this feeling of what it's supposed to sound like, and then what your guitarist sends back to you is kind of what you wanted, but it's kind of not. And sometimes it's everything you wanted, and sometimes it's nothing you wanted. And that can also disjoint you, because in the beginning when you're writing it, it's perfect.
Yeah.
Until you add music to it. It sounds like shit.
Yeah.
Can we swear?
Doesn't matter. We can bleep.
We can bleep it. So yeah, I find it very, very interesting when I stumble across people that have this crazy organic process where they'll have the music first. And this is common with most bands. They have the music first, then the vocalist goes, okay, well, now we're going to write on top of that.
Yeah, but that to me still sounds like a similar process to what you've just described. It's like the music and the lyrics don't manifest necessarily together.
Yeah.
They don't, in the immediate part of the idea taking shape.
Yeah.
They don't take shape together. It's like a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Whereas sometimes I think, you know, I mean, my very limited experience with like lyrics is sometimes I would have like I used to walk a lot, walking to work. And there's a sort of a rhythm in the footsteps. And I'd set quite a determined pace, because it was 4 kilometers from the place where I lived to where I was working. And, you know, so you set a sturdy pace. And while I was walking, you know, when you think, you tend to think in words more than abstract ideas. And sometimes I'd be thinking about something I'm frustrated with, or like something I'm happy about, or whatever. And to this rhythm of my feet, stomp along the, you know, like along the roadside, it's like this rhythm starts becoming a vocal pattern, or like a vocal line, or like some like lyrical concept.
Yeah.
And then I would sometimes go and, throw like a tune to that. But as a non-lyricist, I would usually then have a very cool punchline for potentially a very cool song. But there would be no song.
So like, all you have is the punchline.
Yes.
That happens to me as well sometimes.
Yeah. So I think as a creative process, but a song needs a punchline too. So like as a creative process, like I think, like the focus of this podcast is like, so what can we explore? Like, what do we know about the creative processes? And I think what you've described, it's a very practical approach to a difficult time where a lot of us, we need to earn our bread, so we work.
Yeah.
The luxury of being in a room together for hours at a time and just to like let that organic energy flow and manifest into music and lyric together. For a lot of us, that is a luxury.
For most of us, it's a luxury.
Yeah.
At least here, I know in cases where, and this is also another topic for another episode, is the hobbyist versus the career musician.
Yes.
And I fear that hobbyists they're not exposed to an organic creative process, and that's a problem. Because in the end of the day, that can result in not very organic music, which in turn becomes non-relatable in a sense.
Yeah.
So there needs to be ways that one can drive themselves to create an organic place to create more organic tunes. But then you have factors that bring that down, such as work, like outside work, like your day job, for example.
Yeah.
Families, some guys in bands are like already, family settled down, whatever else, then it's not a career for them. So it doesn't have their ultimate focus.
Well, I think this raises a very interesting point as well. Like I'm sure a lot of people who would bother to listen to our conversations are obviously, they're looking at this not necessarily, I mean, you might be a hobbyist now, but you potentially have the aspiration
to be a career guy.
So like you would be listening to something like this wondering, what do these guys know that I don't know that I could learn to advance myself? So, the only things I know is what I've learned from people who already have the lead on where I am, but where I want to get to.
They've ascended.
Yes. Yeah. So like I really love following interviews with people who I admire for their achievements. A lot of the interviews are, it depends on the questions that the interviewer is asking, and some of them are just lame. So you can burn a lot of time just listening to nonsense. But sometimes the interviewer asks the right question. And one guy who I'm a big fan of his work is Ashton Knight from The Awakening, South African musician. But for the last decade plus, he's been living and operating in the United States.
Okay.
And I remember an early interview listening to this guy, and he basically said, I'm a compulsive songwriter. And it's like, that kind of stuck in my head. It's like, what does that even mean? But it means that he's just writing songs all the time.
Doesn't stop.
It doesn't stop.
Yeah.
So it doesn't necessarily mean that all of his songs are a work of genius. But the fact that he's constantly engaged in that exercise means that like he's getting better at his skill. And among probably a lot of songs which are just sort of like mediocre, there's going to be those gems. And indeed there are. Because I remember when I was fresh out of school, I mean, this was a guy like a goth rocker who had a song on the 5FM, which in South Africa, I mean, that's like a very commercial radio station.
Yeah.
But he had a song charting for weeks and weeks and weeks. Yeah, a song called Martyr. Okay. And I mean, it was playing Sunday radio time on a commercial station in a country that's not known for like a huge goth rock or even alternative music scene at all. But
Yeah.
this guy just dominated it.
How many years ago was this?
This was like early 2000s.
Okay.
But point being, we've spoken in previous episodes, it's not really your genre that dictates whether people are going to like your music or not. It's your songwriting skill. And I think lyrically speaking, I mean, this particular artist I'm referring to, Ashton Knight, I mean, he is quite a poet, and he's always got something to sing about.
Yeah.
But he's also like, he understands musical hooks. He understands what draws the ear in. So through lyrics, he communicates very clearly
Yes.
with his listener. And I think, some of the questions we would ask is, so how do we get into that mindset or that frame of mind where we are establishing a connection with our listener? So a lot of this probably has a lot to do then with, what is your genre of music?
Yeah.
We've been speaking about you and what you've been trying to achieve in a previous episode as well, where it's like you're heading for the youth, high octane live entertainment.
Yes.
So it's like you want to sing about stuff that's thrilling, riveting, dangerous even.
Yeah.
So it's like lyrically, like your lyrics are basically painting a picture of something or telling a story, establishing some kind of connection with your...
Storytelling is very, very important in lyrics. I mean, a lot of people that are in the demographic that I'm, trying to pull, they don't... Not a lot of them read the lyrics.
Yeah.
Some of them are just there for the gears and the tunes.
Yeah, well, heavy metal, a lot of it's like...
Yeah, so like if you are in the business of writing really intricate lyrics, and you want that to be more prominent and you want it to get across to your listenership, it would be well advised to really strongly consider what demographic you're after, because I mean some demographics will just be like, oh well,
Yeah.
it sounded really cool when he did this thing.
Yeah. Well, I think let's now slant this podcast towards the sort of second part of its double barrel theme is vocals.
Yeah,
because now we've spoken a lot about lyrics, blah 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 blah, but the way in which these lyrics are conveyed to the listener is vitally important as well. So I mean, we've kind of touched on how in the context of like extreme metal, like the lyrics are almost like, or at least I've always felt, I remember when I was like still in school, youngster, and my parents were like, how can you listen to this nonsense? You don't even hear what they're saying.
Yeah, that's the majority of this country, really.
Yeah, and I was like, well,
of that generation.
Yeah, to me it doesn't matter what the lyrics were at that time of my life, but because I regarded the vocals more as an extension of the band's instrumentation.
Yeah.
It was more of a rhythmic instrument than it was a carrier of words even.
Yeah.
It was just part of, it's just what I wanted at that time. Like, it was more about carrying that feeling of aggression and rage than it was about actually following the words.
Which could be another reason why, again, going back to the demographic that you're trying to reach, a lot of them feel the same way.
Yeah, but now, the same time of my life as when I was into the super brutal extreme stuff.
Brutals.
Brutals. My brother was actually into the whole house scene.
So the electronic vibe.
Yeah, which during the late 90s, early 2000s, in South Africa at least, was pumping.
Yeah.
So
I remember.
I used to wake up on a Saturday morning, hungover from Friday night's, concert or revelry, and these guys were still tripping from the night before. And
literally.
Literally. So they'd get home from whatever party they've been on, and now they set up their own decks in the living room at 7 in the morning.
Oh.
And now I wake up with a pounding headache, and it's like thump, 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 thump coming from the living room, like permeating through the walls. Anyways, what I noticed about that genre of music is like vocally and lyrically such simple themes and concepts, like one-liners like feel good, I feel so good, and it's like, but that's all that's really needed in that context. But we talk about vocals now and lyrics and the marrying of the two, and it's like you can't really have like, in that context.
I think in this day and age you probably could and get away with it. I mean, have you been listening to some of the stuff that's coming out lately? Like the lyrical themes are so over the top, like way over the top. Like,
yeah, well, I kind of get the feeling that a lot of people are just trying to push the boundaries, which are already so far stretched.
Yeah, well, that comes with being what's the word now? Desensitized.
Yeah. But I mean, I don't want to talk about just metal. I mean, like maybe we're talking like hip hop and stuff like that too, or like rap and like other, let's call it extreme genres.
Extreme genres for me, most of them have a cookie cutter. This is what we do, like in terms of lyrics. There's very few. Now, if we want to go into hip hop, a lot of artists now are coming out with lyrics that are going against the grain of what was popular 2 years ago, and that was the whole mumble rap thing, where there was hardly any lyrics, or there were lyrics, but there were words that were all cut up and jumbled up and that didn't really make a lot of sense, and it would be in this like mumble style.
But I think that's the same as with heavy metal. It was more about the rhythm than it was about the words.
But now you've got these new guys that are coming out of the woodwork, like these unsigned, unknown artists that are getting mainstream attention because they are taking the genre back to its roots. And do you
remember when older what's-his-face, Eminem first came on the scene?
Old what's-his-face?
Yeah, well, I was a much younger person when that first came out, but I remember it came out and it's like, it was such a fresh perspective on the whole like rapping vibe back then, because it's like, wow, this guy actually seems to have something meaningful to share with us.
Yeah.
Which I remember at that time, oh man, like, you could hear what the guys were saying, but it was all just trash, utter trash. And then Eminem came along and it's like, but like this guy's actually a genius lyricist.
Yeah.
And he's conveying emotion.
Yeah.
It's not just word spaghetti for the sake of, rhythm.
Or in this case, mom spaghetti.
Yeah. I mean, he brought rhythm and meaning into the same space.
And now he's one of the most successful rappers in the world. Yeah.
And like, I think,
if not the most successful.
Like, that should really be the key in strong songwriting. Because again, he's a successful rapper because people like him even if they're not into rap.
Yeah.
And again, this just brings us back to that same theme. If you can hone your craft towards quality songwriting.
Yeah.
So your focus shouldn't be just on like, oh, I'm a death metal vocalist, I need to growl deeply and it doesn't matter if my words are audible. It's like, be articulate, explore vocal range.
Dude,
convey your words, be articulate.
I cannot stress this enough. Death metal vocalists, I love death metal. Personally, love it. But when I listen to something and I, as a writer and as a vocalist myself, cannot understand and there's no articulation, I die inside. I want to hear what you're saying, but I just can't do it. It drives me insane because they haven't really thought of it as an important factor. They're just like, I'm just going to do this.
But there's other genres even besides metal where they're not considering their lyrics as an important factor.
That's true.
That's true. Spilling something that like just spilling nonsense, and it might be articulate, but it has no real meaning. It doesn't really bring value to the listener's life. It doesn't convey emotion.
Some people aren't looking for that. I know for a fact, I've had this conversation with quite a few people, and they're like, no, but this tune sounds so good. But
but
there's no want for it.
If we're aiming to achieve the greatest possible success,
yes,
then our purpose here is to analyze and try and decide what is it that gives us that. So it doesn't really matter what some people are not actually looking for. It's like, what works?
Yeah.
And what works is, lyrics that convey meaning and that are articulate.
So we're going to end this off by saying, make your lyrics articulate and meaningful so
Yes,
that
please.
when people listen to it, it doesn't sound like garbage.
Yeah, pretty much.
Thank you. Come again.
Well, it's amazing how few artists, or should I say how few independent artists, are actually achieving that.
Very few.
So,
I don't even think I'm achieving that.
Someone
to be
had
honest.
to talk about it.
Someone, and we will continue talking about these very, very
Yeah.
touchy subjects and topics, and we're going to get more into it as we go along. But thank you so much, guys, for listening to Sound Vibes. I have been the NAT, and this has been Paddy McD. We will see you. We don't actually see you. We don't, because we hear statistics.
Well,
I guess.
You'll be listening to us next week, where we're going to talk about our final topic in the Songwriting Basics sort of series, and hopefully someday we'll be talking about Songwriting Advanced. But basically, next week we're going to talk about creative approaches from, like how do we do the creation of music? We've talked a lot of ideas now, like abstract concepts, but we're going to talk about something a bit more practical next week.
Cool. I need coffee. We'll see you guys. Cheerio. Cheers.
Cheers.
Goodbye. Thank you so much for listening to us ramble on about all things music and sound here on Sound Vibes, produced with the generous assistance of Blended Podcasts, brought to you by Blended Audio.